here we have a quadratic equation, and the task would be to solve an equation like this. Okay, so how do you go about solving it? Well, one method for that would be to factorize this. Okay, so factorize it and then work from there. So if I factorize the left hand side, I'm rewriting this same equation, okay, but just factorized on the left hand side. And I know to factorize a quadratic expression like this would be to think about two numbers that multiply to give me -6, and when I add them I will get -5. I know that will be -6 and +1. So I'm going to have x take away 6 and x plus 1. Okay, so once we've factorized it, we can say that we've rewritten our expression as a multiplication of two things. And in this case, when it's equaling 0, I know that for this left hand side to equal 0, I need this bracket to be 0 or that bracket to be 0, and then these will be my answers. Okay, so and the reason for that is because I've got a multiplication of two things, and the only way I'm going to get 0 for my answer is if one of them is 0 or if both of them are 0. Okay, so let's assume that this bracket is 0. So if this bracket is 0, so we can write x take away 6 can be 0, and therefore x would equal to 6. And we can also say that x plus 1 could have been 0, and therefore x equals -1. Okay, so our solutions are x equals 6 and x equals -1. Okay, when I have quadratic equations that are written in this format, the first thing I need to do is rewrite it so that I have equals 0 on one side. Okay, so we need to rewrite it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, and then that really helps us to solve them. So what I can do is I can take away 4x from both sides. Okay, that will keep my x squared positive. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to have x squared take away 4x plus 3 equals 0. And now what I can do is I can factorize and solve. Okay, so two numbers that multiply to give me 3, and when I add them I get -4. It will be x take away 3 and x take away 1. And we said that either this bracket is 0 or that bracket is 0, and that has to happen for this multiplication to be 0. Okay, so I have x equals 3 or x equals 1. Here's another quadratic equation that I'm going to solve by factorization. Okay, so remember when I factorize, I would have rewritten this as a multiplication on the left hand side, and two things multiplied together to make 0 means one of them has to be 0, or at least one of them has to be 0. So how do I factorize this? Well, this time the coefficient of x squared is not 1, it's 3. So I need to do 3 times -8. Okay, so 3 times -8, and I'll write it on the side. 3 times -8 is -24. And I need two numbers, possibly two different numbers. When I multiply them, I get -24. And when I add them, I get the coefficient of x, which in this case is 10. Okay, so when I add them, I need 10. These two numbers I can see will be +12 and -2. Okay, so 12 add -2 will give me 10. 12 times -2 will give me -24. Okay, so the next step is to rewrite the middle terms. So I'm going to say 3x squared plus 12x take away 2x take away 8 equals 0. Okay, so that's my equation. And I'm going to factorize this side, so 3x bracket x plus 4, and from these two terms I'm going to factorize -2, so -2 bracket x plus 4 equals 0. Now x plus 4 is a factor of both of these parts here, so I'm going to have x plus 4 bracket 3x take away 2, and that's equal to 0. So now I've got two things multiplying together to give me 0. So when this is 0, x is equal to -4. So x is equal to -4. And when this one's 0, I'll actually write this one out. So we've got 3x take away 2 should be 0. and when I rearrange this, I'm going to get 3x equals 2, and divide both sides by 3, I'm going to get x is equal to 2 over 3. Okay, so my two solutions, or roots as well, so sometimes they will say find the roots of this equation. They are x equals -4 and x equals 2/3. Now here are some questions for you to practice. So solve these quadratic equations using the factorization method.